This is week 11, the end of the winter trimester. I'm Jennifer Marie, and this is my Atelier diary. Reminder that there is a summer workshop happening at my Atelier in Chicago. Magda, my instructor, will be teaching it, and I'll be assisting it. The dates are July 10th to August 18th, I believe. I have all the information for it down in the description box down below, and then my email is down there too, so if anyone has any specific questions about it. It's a two-part workshop. You can either take one or both of them. There's a 2-week drawing course and then a 4-week painting course, and if you sign up through me, you get 15% off your tuition, which is a pretty good deal. All right, for my figure painting on Monday, what I did was I looked at my painting, was looking at what the farthest thing from nature was. In this case, the feet and the lower legs were kind of furthest behind in my painting. So I worked on those. It was mostly correcting the tones because they were pretty cold and a little too cool. So I started getting more redder tones in the lower legs and feet. I actually started in the feet, correcting the shapes more in those to get them a bit more accurate. And I worked up the legs that way. And also I was making sure not to just be tunnel visioned in on working on the legs and the feet, but those reddish tones and values that I was mixing up, I would look around the whole painting and see where else I could fit those in. One, so I was just working the whole painting as a whole. Hopefully my painting wouldn't look too piecemeal then, but also so the colors made sense all the way through the painting as well. So the legs wouldn't be, and the feet wouldn't be super red, and everything else kind of wouldn't fit into place with that. So I found some of those more reddish tones in the lower back and also in the hand that's holding the pole. I don't have the pole yet in the painting. On Tuesday, I spent the first part of the day, again, judging what I thought was furthest behind in the painting. Definitely now it was the head. So I started working in the head, and the first thing that I did with that was the ear that's on the right. I really set that in and make sure I knew where the placement was in that. So having the ear down, I could really then really establish the tilt of the head and where it's placed by the placement of the ear. And then once I had the ear, and then I could pretty quickly find really simple ways that I could put in the features of the face. Really simple, just using pretty much the shadow colors just so I could see the eye socket, the cheek and the nose, and the nose and the mouth blur out pretty well into the background. So since the face is turned around, I did want to make the features pretty simple because it's more out of focus because the face is turned and not a strong part of the focal piece because the face is also kind of dark. So just tried to get that in really simply. And then just worked on the rest of the head, getting the big simple planes, like the round part of the back of his head, making sure I got where the planes change as it goes into the face and also the neck and then also into the shoulders. I ended up having more time than I thought I would at the end of the day, so I worked then from the head, I worked to the lower back and also some of the shapes in the darker halftones in the upper portion of the back. And with the lower back, really just trying to get the light to spread evenly across his lower back. I'm finding this really tricky because there's a lot of transitions that are going from shadow to lights, and there's also a lot of color changes in it as well. So I'm just if I have extra time, I'll go back into there and also up into the shoulders just to try and get the light and all these transitions to make sense so nothing looks too choppy or jumpy. On Wednesday, I went back up to the focal point, which is the shoulders, the light of the shoulders and the head. I spent most of my time with the shoulders, and kind of like what I was talking about with the lower back, how there's just in the shoulders, there's just so much color variation, value variation, temperature variation in the shoulders, and it is the focal point. So I am finding it pretty difficult to make sure that the light is spreading across those areas evenly and not to have things look over modeled. And then when you have something look over modeled, it means that you're putting in too many contrasts in it, so the surface is looking bumpier, or you can also get the skin to look not like a skin texture if it's over modeled, like it can look super shiny or dirty if your values aren't placed right. So I just keep going over that area and try and get it more and more accurate so it looks like there's a real effective light happening on the shoulders. The shoulders are complicated because Kevin does have a lot of bumps of muscles that you can see in that area. So trying to make sure that the light, color, tone, temperature, everything's spreading over that evenly to give a realistic effect of light. And I do have one trick for thinking of doing this, and I think of how light is falling across his body, how water would be falling across his body. So the shoulders, the top of the shoulders, they're tilted up more towards the light or the water. So if the light is water, it would hit his shoulders and create, you know, the more white rapids that would make it look brighter and lighter. And then also then as the water's going to move gradually and evenly across his body in the light areas, and it's not going to touch the shadow ones because those are like more like a cavernous form where the water is going to just like go over and you're not going to see until it hits another plane that's facing up towards the skylight. And so I don't know if that makes sense. It makes sense to me, but I guess what I'm saying is just to think of the light moving as water would fall down the figure to make sure that things are happening gradually, not looking too choppy or uneven, seeing the body in bigger planes, like that whole top part of the shoulders that's bright, thinking of that as a plane, a big plane, before you start seeing all the little bumps of muscles across it. And I'm finding it tricky, and I feel like every day I work on it, I get a little bit closer to it, but there's still a lot of work to get it to look as good as I want it to. On Thursday, I wanted to work more on the shoulders because I felt like I could get them better, though it was kind of in this weird stage where the paint had sunken in, so it was looking kind of matte and a little cloudy, so I couldn't see quite clearly what I did the day before. Normally, I would oil out, that would freshen the paint up so I could see that paint layer really clearly, and also the paint would apply on it really nicely. But it was kind of tacky still, so it was sunken in but not completely dry, so I couldn't oil over that. So I just saved that for another day and I worked on other areas. Then I was seeing what else I could do to the painting, and I was looking at it, and especially the lower portion of Kevin, like his legs, mostly his legs and his feet, were looking pretty outlined. So I spent most of that day working on the edges, making sure that the edges of the legs you would see contrast that would pull the leg forward out from the background. But then there's a lot of other areas in the legs where you would see the skin tones would blend really nicely into the background, and you wouldn't have that really clear, distinct line from background to leg. So doing that, just really trying to push the atmosphere just by working on edge quality. Also, it got pretty stormy that day, and since we do work under natural light, there was just a skylight over Kevin, so it got pretty stormy and really dark, and for some of the day, I couldn't even really see Kevin at all. So it was just so dark. So Matt was talking to me to work on the background of the painting. Now the background, I've been trying to do a few different things with the background, with layering paint up on it and not applying a lot of thick paint on the background, but applying it a bit thinner in a way that I'm rubbing the paint over the background. And it's not necessarily, some of it is scumbling, but not necessarily always scumbling. I'll be working wet into wet, but I guess I won't have as much paint on my brush, so as it's pulling across the canvas surface, some of the paint picks up off the brush, but you can still see the other wet layer under it. So I was just trying to show variation so the background wouldn't look like a flat color. Matt was saying that that's good to practice and to try and do that, but I was making it look have too many variations where it was distracting from the figure and where it wasn't giving that atmospheric look, like it wasn't having the feeling of air, but something else that, I don't know, just had too much variation, so it was distracting from, it was almost like it was painted similarly to some parts of Kevin, so it didn't stand out as air or background, but had like some parts was painted in a way that I was painting the skin, and I don't know, there was just too much going on back there, and it wasn't gradual transitions enough. So since it was super dark anyway, I already had the values that I knew that I wanted for the background, so I just would mix up colors and just trying to even it out a little bit, not to make it look flat, but also not too choppy and jumpy. And then Friday was the last official day of the pose. So Magda came by to critique my painting early on, and she was saying that I should go back into the shoulders since those are the focal point and work more on that. And she was saying it's always nice when you have a lot of variation, different ways of painting forms in the figure. And she said since the shoulders are the brightest part, the focal point, she said that if I could get them painted to look more like unified forms and not as brushstrokey as I had, she said that will help draw the eye to have something really solid to fall on and pull it apart from other areas in the painting. So I worked on that, and what I did was I pretty much mixed up the colors that I already had on the shoulder, and so I was just reapplying them, but a little bit more carefully so I could get the areas to look more solid and not as brushstrokey. I think though I might have overdone it. It looks a little bit too smoothed out, I guess, for my taste, but I think I brought it in a better direction, I guess. And then that day I also worked on Kevin's face and made it a little bit more colorful, and I pushed the color in some other areas as well that day. And so that was technically the last day for it, but Matt is hiring Kevin for one more day over our spring break, and so I'm gonna work on him for one more day. And what I'm gonna do is I think I'm gonna try and experiment a bit and see if I can get things to look solid, gradual transitions, but also show my brushwork so it's not too smooth, but then also not too choppy, distracting, not being able to see the form at the same time. So we'll see how that goes. My cast, I've been working on my cast, trying to get everything up to the level of the focal baby that I painted. So the focal baby has pretty much the most paint on it. I spent the most time on it, and I want to put that much care and attention to every other part of the painting so I can work it up to the same stage as that. So what I did this week was the three babies that are closest together, I worked in between the heads where all those arms are going over each other, and then I started to work on the baby that's on the right. There was a lot of work to do with correcting the drawing in the baby that's all the way to the left. I don't know if I just said the right, but the baby that's all the way to the left, I had a lot of work to fix the face because I really lost the drawing and it was looking pretty goofy. Then I also started to work down the baby as well, and I set a goal for myself to get a certain amount of work done, and I didn't meet that goal this week, which is a little disappointing, but it's still all heading in the right direction, just needs more work put in on this painting for sure. This was the last week of the trimester, so we have our end of term critique where you show all of the work that you've completed during that trimester. It's a private critique just between the student, the two instructors, Matt and Magda, and they talk about your strengths and weaknesses and what you should work on. I'll be making a video about everything we talked about and also all the work that I showed. But now I'm on spring break, it's for a week. I think it came at the perfect time because I'm feeling a little burnt out. So I'm gonna keep working, but just take it a little bit easier.